topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Tennessee and Missouri. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the finest experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. This show will be running again in both Tennessee and Missouri, as well as in Texas. This is one of our top shows that we do. And I got to say this before I introduce you to our great expert. We just got a text in from a listener saying, I just read you're doing a show. I'm watching this for the first time. It's amazing how God works. I am having a tax problem. I cannot wait to hear your expert. Let me introduce you to our expert, attorney Lance Drury.
How you doing, Steve?
God,
Always
you're like God, Lance. You're like getting this fan club. I mean, people love. We had someone said, I guess you mentioned your age in one of the shows, and they said, I cannot believe he has got so much spunk for his age.
Well, you got to keep going. If you keep going, you got the spunk. I'm afraid that if I quit working, I'd be dead in less than 6 months. I'd probably lay around and not get out of bed at 4:30, 5 o'clock. I'd sleep in till 9:30. And it would kill me that I'm not helping people out. It would destroy my purpose for living. I love what I do. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going on to the end.
Well, not only are you happy with what you do, you've expanded into Texas, mainly San Antonio, which is a huge market. And we're already getting people writing us from Texas. First of all, I want to tell everyone we are so glad that we have you because people love the way you explain things, Lance. You don't talk over their head and you talk like, they're on the same level as you. And people really appreciate that.
Well, that's what we're here for. You got to be able to communicate with people. And it's just a great feeling. Because I go places and people know as soon as I open my mouth who I am because my voice is pretty distinct.
Yes.
And I can remember being up at the Anvil restaurant in St. Genevieve several months ago. I'm sitting at the bar drinking my water and my wine, and there's this table of 6 people right behind me, nobody else in there. And all of a sudden, this woman jumps up and she goes, if you got tax problems, you got legal problems.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it.
I did it all the time.
Well, tell people, we have a lot of new people who are joining us for the first time. Tell people about your firm.
Well, my firm is now practicing primarily in Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas. We have offices in St. Genevieve, Missouri, which is a small historic town about an hour south of St. Louis, the oldest permanent European settlement west of the Mississippi River. We're now in the National Park District. I can look out of my living room window and see the backyard of the commandant's house. I have an office in St. Louis. I go there tomorrow. We have an office in Nashville. We now have an office in San Antonio. I'm going there Sunday. I have 16 employees. I keep growing the business. I'm only a few months away from being 72, and I have 2 lawyers in Los Angeles and one in Orlando, Florida. I've got to tell you, in the old days, I thought I'd hire enrolled agents. I wouldn't have to
Right.
pay as much as a lawyer and they'd know as much. Well, I got to tell you, I would never do that again. I have lawyers. I have the finest bunch of practitioners. The lawyers work harder. They work smarter. They're great at argumentation, which a lot of enrolled agents don't have. And they're extremely client oriented. I had some people, and I'm not saying this is true from everybody, but I had a couple of people that worked with the IRS, and they just didn't put in the time to take care of their clients. It's a real shame, but they have this attitude and they had to do things like they did at the IRS. And it's a totally different mindset. You're on the opposite side now. So you've got to look at things in an entirely different way. And you have to remember, you're here to help your client out as much as possible.
I think that what you do, you go up against some of the toughest negotiators when it comes time to the IRS. I mean, they are very good at what they do, but you go up against them every day. Lance, I want to say something because we got a person who has a business because you also handle businesses. Why waste your time? And I'm telling you, you could be on the phone 2 or 3 hours waiting to get an IRS agent on when you could have had Lance's firm handling this for you so you can take care of your business and let them handle the IRS. Isn't that true?
That's true. And we have special software. We pay a pretty penny for it, but we can get through in 3 minutes now. In the old days,
Wow.
we were just like everybody else, be on the phone for an hour, be for 2 hours, and then get disconnected sometimes. Now, I have to tell you, I have over 1,000 clients at any one time, 16 employees. I don't really handle a caseload anymore. Every now and then I get involved in stuff, but I come in at 6 in the morning or before. At 7, my legal assistants come in. We start going through cases at 9 o'clock. I start doing initial consultations. Monday in San Antonio, I have 7 appointments.
Wow.
So, it's just busy. People are getting the levy letters, and that's when people call you because they're scared out of their wits because of what the IRS is trying to do to them, which is to wipe out their bank account, take 90% of their wages.
I got a letter right after your last show, and I think there's a lot of people out there, Lance, who are embarrassed that they haven't paid their taxes. But you don't care about that. That is not your concern. You're like in a non-judgmental zone. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it happens. I mean, unfortunately, my clients are procrastinators. And for example, with businesses, it's not really their fault. The problem is somebody doesn't pay them to keep the business running. They pay their employees, they pay their suppliers, thinking they'd catch up in the next quarter, and it doesn't happen. It just kind of snowballs. And the other problem is a lot of these people are great at what they do, but you got to have some business expertise to run your own business. And unfortunately, people work till 7, 8 at night, and the last thing they want to do is do paperwork. But 70% of my clients, if not more, are self-employed people. Those are the people that get in trouble because the taxes aren't automatically taken out.
Exactly. I was telling you before the show, we got a letter from somebody that, if you don't mind, kind of walk them through. You can give them the short or the long version. Walk them through once they make that phone call to your office.
Well, when they make the phone call to my office, one of my legal assistants is going to ask them a series of questions to get background information because I really don't have the time to do that. I do so many consults, and they can do that as good, if not better than I. I have a lot of excellent legal assistants, great people skills. They care about our clientele. So they'll take all that information, set up a free half-hour consultation with me, and then we'll go through it. And I think the person you were talking to has a couple years of unfiled tax returns. So if they decide to hire me, they're going to sign off on a power of attorney. We're going to have their social security number because that's how the IRS identifies that I'm actually their legal representative. They're going to sign an engagement letter. The power of attorney is going into the IRS. And now it's taking a minimum of 20 business days for those powers of attorney to process. In the old days, it was a week to 10 days. But ever since the pandemic, the IRS is so screwed up and they're so far behind. I've never seen the IRS as bad as it is now.
Wow, didn't know that.
And so we're going to go in. We're going to go all the way back to 1990 so we don't miss anything, because in those initial consults, half the time people know exactly what's going on, but the other half, they know what part of their problem is, but they don't know what else is going on with the IRS, because they try to make it so confusing, so complicated to the average individual. They really don't want you to understand what's going on. And so we're going to make sure that at least the last 6 years' tax returns are prepared and filed. If they're not, then we're going to prepare the returns. We're also going to go into the IRS systems and see what else is going on. We can get the whole chronology of their case back to 1990, make sure there's nothing else going on. Once the returns are filed, we may be finished. There may not be any liability. But if there is, and they owe enough, then we'll talk about our fee to get them a resolution with the Internal Revenue Service.
A person is considered in collections with the IRS when? Is it from the time they receive the letter?
It's from the time they get, I believe it's the LT-16 letter, which is the initial assessment of the tax, which comes, and you never know when it's going to come. It should come shortly after the return is processed, but it's the IRS. They're a bureaucracy. Things fall through the cracks, so you never know for sure. But that's really when you know that they're in collections, when they send that assessment notice advising you, you have liability. We want you to take care of this.
Lance, I don't think people really understand that if they try to talk to the IRS themselves, they could actually make things worse for themselves. Isn't that true?
Yeah, and I don't know if I've talked to you about this before. This happened with a guy out of Tennessee maybe a month ago. He owed $1.2 million.
Wow.
For years, he's been doing this on his own. He thought he could do it on his own. And he came to us, and of course, we were going to ask him for a lot of money, and he didn't hire us. Well, we found out a week later, they garnished. They levied his $300,000 retirement account, his bank account, and everything else, simply because he thought he could take care of this. And he claimed when we talked to him that he'd had 4 revenue officers and they had all lied to him. But I can tell you, I can assure you, he would not have been levied, because they do not just go out and levy you. They send you what's called a summary of taxpayer contact. It's Form 9297. They ask you for all these items. And the problem is, it's so confusing, so complicated. People think they sent everything in, but they didn't. And they won't call him up like they would us and say, hey, we need this, this, and this. And if they don't call us, we call them and say, hey, is there anything else you need from us? No, they'll just go out and levy that individual. So the fact that he tried to do this on his own, and he's in his 50s, so they wiped out his whole savings for his retirement. And so I don't know if he'll ever get back on his feet again. But, you know, he just waited too long, and this happens all the time.
Yeah, I know people sometimes think they are on the same level as some of these IRS agents, and they're not. But this is all your firm does. That's what's so important. I mean, you don't have a shingle that out there saying criminal law and personal injury law. You strictly concentrate on IRS collections, back taxes.
Yes. Now, what we do is, if somebody has been audited, they're under criminal investigation at the federal level, we will represent them during the criminal investigation and in state court. And a lot of people don't know this. If you don't pay your sales tax, that's a crime, because they consider it stealing, because it was never your monies. You were just collecting the tax for the state. And most people don't know that. And we have represented people in state court. I had a guy once, he owed over $1 million. I didn't charge him enough. I would have charged him 3 times now what I charged him back then. They wanted 15 to 20 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections when I got in the case.
Wow.
He owed over $1 million in state sales taxes. He was basically running a scam. He'd set up an LLC, not pay the tax, shut it down. He had like a dozen of those. And so when I got involved, they wanted all this time. The bond was $150,000 cash only. I said, you guys want your money? Get him out on a recognizance bond. He doesn't pay anything for the bond. We'll give you the $150,000 as restitution on the amount that he owes, which we did. Out of 96 felony counts, 93 were dismissed. 2 were reduced to misdemeanors. He got felony probation on the remaining count, and he still wasn't happy. He still wasn't happy.
Oh, amazing. You know, Lance, we get so many questions. We just got one just now. This one is from Knoxville, Tennessee, wants to know, what is the Fresh Start program really for real? They make it sound so easy.
Well, it's not. It's real, but it's basically just a term of art. What they did make it easier to get an offer in compromise because they lowered the multiplier to depend how much you have to pay back. They also raised from $5,000 to $10,000 the amount before a lien would be filed against you. But it basically comes down to this. It's all based on your ability to pay it back, and you have to prove to the IRS that you don't have the ability to pay some of it back or all of it back. 85 to 90% of our clients never pay back the full amount. 10 to 15%, maybe more, never pay a dime. But it's a lot of work for us. This is why I work every Saturday and Sunday morning, because it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the taxpayer. And if they are not going to give us the financial information we need when we need it, they're wasting their money and hiring us, because it's a collaborative effort. We're in this together with the taxpayer. We have responsibilities to the taxpayer, but the taxpayer has responsibilities to themselves as well. And one of those things is getting us the information we need when we need it. So no, the Fresh Start program doesn't mean that everything's easy with the IRS.
That figures. What about, we just got a text wanting to know, do you go on audits with your clients?
We don't go on the audit with our client. Our client doesn't get anywhere close to the auditor. We go in their stead.
Oh,
So yeah, we don't, because a lot of audits can go criminal simply because of what the taxpayer says. And I do know there's practitioners that let their clients go to the audit or let them talk to the IRS. We would never do that. In fact, it's a condition of our continued representation that the client is never to talk directly to the IRS, or we're going to revoke our power of attorney, because then we don't know what's going on. And then it's like the taxpayer says, oh, this was the conversation. The IRS tells us something else, and we can't argue with the IRS because we weren't privy to that conversation.
Lance, I don't think people really understand. You've got a lot of tools in the tool bag. Maybe something might not work for one person, but it could work for someone else. But you've got a lot of options when people contact you.
Well, and here's the thing. There's no cookie cutter approach to this. Every client's financial situation is different. Everybody's income is different. Everybody's withholdings are different. Everybody's mortgage is different. Everybody's car payment is different. Utilities. Every resolution is custom made to that particular client. It's the only way we can do it. It's a lot of work. We spend more time compiling and analyzing financial information. We may have to go back and forth 3, 4, 5 times, but we got to get the numbers right for 2 reasons. The taxpayer is submitting them under penalties of perjury. And secondly, guess what? You give us bad numbers, we're going to give you bad advice. So we got to make sure the numbers are right. And, there are some practitioners, they take a financial statement from the client. It's not right, but they go with it and they do what they can. And you're not serving your client very well if that's the approach. You got to be much more proactive than relying, because those financial statements are confusing. They're complicated to the average individual. And so we have to go through bank statements, credit card statements, debit card statements, because anybody can put a number down, but you got to have the documentation to support a lot of those expenses.
I guess it's so important that people are honest with you, that they tell you, no matter how embarrassing it is, that you've got to have the correct information in order to help them.
That is correct. We got to have the documentation. They've got to get the returns filed, and they also have to get us the financial information. We just had a client, and he was not happy, but here's what happened. You got to file the last 6 years' tax returns. We cannot advise people not to file the returns for the last 6 years because it's a crime. I can't advise people to commit a crime. So he comes to us to prepare the returns, and lo and behold, we file 1 year's returns, and he owes like $10,000 in liability. And he's mad at us because you guys created this debt that didn't need to be created, so on and so forth. So we've parted ways with him because we can't perpetuate crimes on the part of our clientele. And the federal government requires that the last 6 years' tax returns have to be filed. I'm just going to give you an aside. I tell everybody, if you don't hire me, hire a lawyer that does this every single day. Accountants are great with the numbers, but here's the mistake that accountants make because they just dabble in this. Client has 10 years of unfiled returns and he's self-employed. The accountant says, we're going to prepare all 10 years. Well, if the IRS hasn't filed for you and you haven't filed, the liability is zero. And at this late date, the IRS is not going to go back beyond 2019 and file a return. But they prepare the return, they file it, and they're putting $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 of liability on their client that didn't need to be there.
Lance, I got to tell you, your show, because it's so interesting, goes by so fast. Tell people how they can reach your office.
Well, you can see at the bottom of the screen my various phone numbers, but if you want to go to my website, it's lancedrurylaw.com. There's a lot of great information. You'll see the awards we've won, the books I've co-authored, the speeches I've given around the country, and lots of testimonials concerning my firm. We are here to take care of you and to get you the best possible result with the Internal Revenue Service. That's what we do every single day.
We'll be running the show again next Friday at the same time. Lance, thank you so much. Love doing the show with you. It's so important, and you are reaching many people. We'll see you next month.
That'll be great, Steve. It's a pleasure. I just wish I'd be on more often.
Hey, we do too. Thanks, Lance.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.